from the Android Dev Summit 2019, and welcome back to the Ask Android livestream, where we're going to be taking your questions and turning them into delectable Android answers. My name is Lyla.
And I'm Dan, and next up to answer your questions about Jetpack Compose are Anna-Chiara Bellini and Adam Powell. Now, Anna-Chiara is a PM on Jetpack Compose, while Adam is one of the engineering leads.
Okay, and I just want to give a quick shout out to our live stream. Gokul is staying up late to watch us, so thank you, Gokul.
Yay.
All right, first question. Nick Forzed asks, is this going to be, and this being Jetpack Compose, the preferred way to make UI in the future?
I mean, it's my preferred way.
My preferred way as well.
Okay, not biased at all, right?
Okay, a question that came in from the live stream from Jason Ostrand. Most pressing question on my mind, how does Android app architecture change with Jetpack Compose?
So hopefully not as much as you might think. I mean, the intent is for Jetpack Compose to kind of slot in right next to all of the things that we've been doing with Android architecture components so far. If anything, we're kind of hoping that it brings UI development a little bit more up to that sort of standard that we've set.
Okay,
all right.
So from Twitter, okay, I very much apologize in advance. Yekta Sarioglu asks, okay, so they say, I hate XML for design purposes. When is Jetpack Compose going to be released for beta or alpha stage at least? Do you have any date on your schedule? I'm really keen to try new code-based UI design.
You should try it right now anyways.
You can try it today because we are in developer preview. It's available, and so please download and try. But if you listen to the keynote, you know that we should be going beta next year. So just stay tuned.
Excellent. So one of the questions that came in from the live stream from DS is, will Compose handle like recycling logic for us, things like recycler view, or is the idea for us to just use it for static kinds of views?
No, dynamic views are definitely within what Compose is trying to do. So we don't necessarily have like a list view or recycler view widget in there in the preview that's available today, but that's coming.
Great.
Okay, so from I'm Shreyas Patil asks, okay, so we've been getting a lot of questions about performance. This is sort of a multi-layered question. So what will the future of layout XML be after Jetpack Compose? And can we rely on Compose, like will we be able to rely completely on Jetpack Compose in the future? And then how's the performance difference?
All right, so can you rely on Jetpack Compose completely?
Yes.
The intention is yes, that you can write an app from the ground up with it. But if you go watch the What's New in Compose talk, I talked a little bit about how you can use existing XML layouts from within Compose and sort of vice versa, and kind of how we're thinking about that problem space so far. We definitely want it to be interoperable with any of your existing code that you have today.
Okay, cool. And then the performance question, if we haven't tackled it. I'm asking the hard-hitting questions here.
Yes, right.
For you.
Excellent reporter job.
Right. So basically we're relying on a lot of things in the experimental compiler right now, and there's some things that we've kind of had to turn off or turn on. So for example, inlining of inline classes within Kotlin is something that has kind of come and gone so far. But we're kind of counting on that for a lot of things in terms of like, we use like real units for things rather than the @intdef annotations and just kind of like cram everything through primitives for things. Instead, we're using Kotlin's inline classes or counting on that being available for Compose. So right now we're doing just kind of like allocations everywhere in terms of just like very, very simple sort of things. So you might see on some older devices, like you'll see a little bit of stuttering in there. You'll also see a few cases where it might be easy to cause like whole-scale recompositions in ways that like cause your app to jitter or jank, etc. So we're working on smoothing those out and making it so that those are things that like you don't bump into in your day-to-day. If you take a look at some of the demos that we've got today, I think our performance is in a pretty good spot. I mean, like you can get your lists, get them flinging, et cetera, and it's looking pretty good.
Awesome.
The PM short answer is yes, we're working hard on it.
That's great. So we have a question from the YouTube live stream from Maximilian. Is Compose a better or cleaner approach than using something like data binding with live data?
You want to take it? I take it. With live data, you can use Compose. We've tried it. It's a different approach to data binding, right? With data binding, you use the views, and with Compose, you just recompose automatically. So it's just a different approach. I'm not sure if we can. For us, we like it better, but it's a bit like the first question.
Yeah, I would say if you're trying to decide between some of these things, give it a try. I think that we're putting a lot behind Compose right now, and I think that it's something that like. We're trying to make sure that we're at least as nice to use as data binding is today.
So you were talking a little bit about the interoperability between XML and Compose. Can you talk a bit more, if you know, what the migration story is going to look like? What are your thoughts about that?
Well, so you're saying migration story in terms of like, do I want to do like some sort of a direct conversion? I have a direct XML layout. So this is something that we've really kind of talked about a lot in the team, and I think that part of what we were trying to do is we're trying to build on a different set of primitives. So like everyone's kind of familiar with what's there in Android.widget, and I think that at this point we look back on how we've kind of built that system out over the years. And there's things that we would do differently, and so that's kind of what we've expressed with the Compose UI components so far. But what that means is that there's not generally always going to be a one-to-one mapping from something that exists in the view system and something that exists in the set of composable functions that are available. So while you might be used to being able to take like a snippet of code from the Java programming language and paste that into a Kotlin file and have like some sort of auto conversion there, the machine translation there can actually be 100% accurate. With Compose, we're kind of expecting that may not be the case unless you still sort of appeal to the views that you started from in terms of making sure that it actually works the same way. It's one thing to get something that looks the same. It's another thing to say that like, okay, all of your logic wire up that kind of sits around this. When you're dealing with existing view code, you're talking about code that, again, you're doing find view by ID, you're doing data binding, you're doing view binding, you're doing all of these other things that sort of performs this wire up for you. You've got custom code and list adapters everywhere, recycler view adapters everywhere. So as soon as you have all of these things in the mix, trying to say, okay, take all of that and then do the immediate conversion as sort of a machine translation for me. I think that would be a fascinating project to try to work on, but it's not what we're targeting.
Well,
right
I mean,
now,
and a lot of those things are actually just trying to, allow you to create and use reactive UI patterns on Android, and that's what Compose really is a full reactive toolkit. Right. So one of the questions that also came was in terms of like interoperability between existing Android UI. Can I take a composable and can I put it into the middle of an existing view hierarchy, or vice versa? Can I take something like a web view, which is an existing thing, and put it into my composable hierarchy?
Yeah, in fact, you can take a look at the repository that's there today, and you can see some of the work that we were doing to sort of put a web view in a wrapper. As this is kind of one of our very early proof of concepts that we did in the project that sort of lays some of this out. And if you check out the What's New in talk again, I'm just going to keep plugging that. Then I talked a little bit about where we're thinking in terms of compatibility in both directions. So consuming Compose from within a view hierarchy and also consuming views from within a Compose hierarchy. So we want both of those things to be really seamless.
Cool. Anything from the live stream that's good? Because I could ask this. You take a look at that. Okay, so I think a good question to ask is sort of, all right, people are excited about Compose. At this moment, what's the best way to learn Compose, get started? What would you suggest for that?
Wonderful question. We have a brand new website. It's developer.android.com/jetpack/compose.
Okay.
And beautiful new website, and it links you directly to a tutorial. So the tutorial takes you through the very first steps, building a simple UI, a composable function that has a picture and 3 lines of text and styles them nicely, and that's kind of your first step. Okay. Then if you want to take a step further, you can look at the JetNews sample that we published, which kind of shows you all the components that we have at the moment, and hopefully the code should be clear enough to follow up, and so you can start and play with it right away.
And you need 4.0, which I'm
You need
assuming
4.0, yes. It's all explained very well in the tutorial, and on the page you need the Canary version of 4.0.
Okay.
So Marta asks,
a sticky note like on the back of your laptop over there.
Marta asks, does Jetpack Compose support building dynamic layouts using Constraint Layout instead of linear layouts?
So, good question. So for Constraint Layout, it is not there yet, but we are working on it. I think this was mentioned in the What's New in Compose talk as well, just to plug it in for you. Yes, we're working on it, so Constraint Layout will be available. A linear layout, not exactly. We already have row and column, which are just a bit better maybe than linear layout, because they're more like the Flexbox, but you basically already have them there.
Okay. So obviously one of the messages is like, we want you to try this. We want you to see how it feels. So somebody, our viewers out there, try it. What's the best way to get feedback to you besides showing up at ADS and, grabbing you and giving thoughts? What happens if you're, tuning in from Haiti or many of the other places that we've got viewers right now.
Yes.
On the webpage there are a few links that you can follow to get in touch with us if you play with Compose. One of them is getting involved in a Slack group. There are links to apply for that one. Then we have our Stack Overflow, but probably the best way to get feedback to us is the Slack group, or filing bugs,
there too,
the issue tracker, or filing bugs as well.
And there's directions to how to file bugs for the issue tracker there.
It's everything on the web page. We put all the links for you guys to play with.
So like if you have feature requests, for example, please file those. We'll go ahead and work our way through those too.
Is there a way to upvote issues that you're particularly passionate about?
I think we can start issues still, right?
Yeah.
I think so. And I think that one of the important messages is that we want that feedback. We are building Compose with the feedback of users, and we're very keen on getting it.
Yeah, I mean, I think Compose was started partially because of feedback or things that we were seeing in the community. Right?
Yeah. So one of the questions we have from the YouTube live stream from Carolina, asking about Adam's response. If Compose is going to be the preferred way to build UI, is it my preferred way? Is that the official answer? that it's Adam Powell's preferred way to build UI?
Answer for the Compose team.
Are we going to put that on the website?
Adam Powell's preferred way to build Android UI. So is that our official answer?
Compose is a new way of building UIs, right? Views are there. Views are staying there. Like, we're not scraping them.
Right,
But
exactly.
Compose is a different way of building UIs, just like, we're becoming a bit more opinionated, and this is one of the things that we are proposing to developers.
Right. And ultimately, it's going to come down to what developers think. If all developers start using Compose, then it will be the preferred way.
Yeah,
I think that's
actually the right answer.
Yeah,
it will really depend what people think more than what we
vote
think.
with their dependencies.
Exactly.
All right, cool. So Alexander from the YouTube live stream asks, how is Compose going to handle different screen sizes?
Beautifully.
If we know that.
It's going to be fantastic.
So I guess if you know, what are the developers' sort of responsibilities in that?
Beautifully in the sense that as you're using, there are two things actually here. One is, as you're using a declarative UI pattern, like if you have breakpoints and you are doing things that are particular, you can just take care of that in your code in a very simple way. The other thing is that the tools help you build that because the preview helps you see directly what happens with different form factors, different font scaling, different themes, so you can see exactly what you can iterate very fast on that. So Compose itself, I think, is going to handle different screen sizes very well.
Yeah, if you want to know something a little bit more concrete, so for example, Clara showed the layout API that we have that's sort of our very low level, how do I make a custom layout, something primitive that everything else in Compose is based on for layout. We've got another one that we just call with constraints right now that gives you the ability to essentially change the composition of your children based on the measurement constraints that are coming in. So that allows you to you have a very low level primitive for creating your own breakpoints, however those need to be. And we can sort of start building up a library of useful components that we can offer out of the box, just kind of based on what people find most useful. If the question is more about you're used to a lot of the resource qualifiers that are there. Yeah, you'll have access to the configuration object. You can switch on those however you like. Kotlin's when statement is very powerful.
Yeah, I was going to say.
But I think that the core answer there is that yes, you will write some code there, and it will end up being pretty reusable. So hopefully you won't have to always refer back to the d.android.com page, the providing resources page that even I have to go to every time I want to know what the resolution order is. If you have to specify more than one qualifier at once.
Exactly.
So no, you'll be able to just take a look at your code. It's like, no, it happens in this order because this is the way that I wanted it, rather than trying to figure out oh no, this is just kind of the way that the Android team set it up 10 years ago. So.
Nice. So one of the questions that came from Rizky is navigation component in Jetpack Compose.
Question mark.
Question mark. We like it. So it was one of the earlier kind of explorations that we did on the team was a member of the team actually created a custom navigator for the navigation component where you just provide a composable function call as this is my navigation destination within that. Fragments are not the only language for the navigation architecture component. We designed it from the very beginning with very much that in mind.
Right.
It turns out that some people don't actually like using fragments in their app. Can you believe it?
Shocking.
Yeah. So we designed the component to be a little bit more pluggable for things like that, and it's really paid off with Compose. So I think that it's going to make these two things slot together quite nicely.
All right, so I want to make sure that we hit on it. You had mentioned the editor in Android Studio.
Yes.
So we have a couple questions just about whether the editor exists, which it does. Anything?
So if you're looking for layout editor,
layout editor.
We don't have that
Okay.
at the
It's a
moment.
preview.
We have a preview.
Okay, yeah.
We have a preview that helps you see almost in real time what is happening to your UI. So.
Cool.
Yeah, one of the questions that actually Zed asked was how does Compose relate to faster apply changes?
I would say that apply changes is there. I'm not entirely sure it's faster. I think it's apply changes. But the thing is, apply changes is important that it's fast because it's how you iterate on development, right? So we go back to the root of the problem, which is not just get apply changes faster, but what do developers need, which is develop faster, iterate faster. That's why we have the preview, because we tested it ourselves. It's much easier to work on a component in isolation and just see how it works and iterate faster on that. And that's why you have the preview. It's just a way to work even faster.
And if you're watching kind of the stream of commits in AOSP, you might see some things where we have added some hooks into the Compose runtime so that a tool like apply changes can go ahead and give it a kick, recompose after some code changes have been applied, so on and so forth. So we're starting to build some more of that stuff.
Well, and the nice thing is if you're using the preview in Android Studio, you're not even relying on apply changes. You're just watching the preview is just being updated dynamically. Then you can actually also apply the changes really quickly when you're actually writing your code.
Right.
So you're actually got both things working for you to help you compose.
We're kind of approaching the developer velocity question from kind of up and down the entire stack. We want to make sure that, like, based on the use cases that you have for like what you're trying to test and do, that we've got you covered.
So Steph asks from Twitter. They're wondering about the layout layout inflation. So basically, where and how do these layouts actually get inflated? Is anything changing?
So if you're using an XML layout and using it from kind of one of our interop paths, then the inflation happens basically in the same way that it does today, or will happen once we build some more of that stuff out. If the question is, where does this stuff actually get instantiated when you're using the native Compose UI pieces? It gets instantiated by the runtime itself. So like those actually are just the composable functions running. Those are sort of constructing the UI hierarchy live, more or less. So there's no like separate from a file stream inflation process. I mean, I guess if you wanted to write like kind of an interpreter that goes through and does something like that from a file on disk or something, you could. But.
Yeah, I think that maybe, I'm not sure if I understand where that question comes from, but I have seen some of these as well. What Compose is doing is not under the hood creating layout XML and just hiding these things from you. It's a completely different approach. So it's not just reusing the same way. It's not just a way of expressing the same things.
Are there any performance gotchas related with that you can think of, or things that people should know, given that it's changing a little bit from writing it in XML?
For what? I mean, I think,
sorry, in Compose.
Well, I mean, so for Compose, we've, if you look back at kind of what performance for layout inflation always was, and performance for not just that, but view creation, performance in view creation was kind of bound by a couple of things. It was bound by kind of the process of reading that stream off of disk, or just kind of from the mapped resources of your APK, but it was also part of instantiating the views and running all of the view constructors for the entire type hierarchy of the views that you were instantiating. So some of these things could cause a number of like repeated styling passes over and over for each layer of hierarchy that you have. Like the view constructors are not particularly cheap. So we, when you write like a recycler view adapter or a list view adapter or so on and so forth, we split this step out and we say, okay, here we're going to separate out the create and bind steps as being something separate. We handle that kind of under the hood for you. So we want to make sure that whenever we can, we will just apply those same changes that you've made to your UI to what's already been kind of constructed under the hood for you.
All right, awesome. So I think that our time is just about up. Thank you so much, Anna-Chiara and Adam, for stopping by to answer our community's questions about Compose. We're going to take a super quick break right now, and we're going to be right back with our Camera X experts.